Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and this weekend Best of Special. What a week. We had our pals from the Ruthless program on to talk about Jen Psaki's outrageous lie in her new book that President Biden didn't really check his watch during the Afghanistan fallen soldier ceremony. Hello, there's video. How on earth did she think she was going to get away with this? Marcia Clark and Mark Geragos were here to react with me in real time to the news that Donald Trump was going to debate President Biden. It's happening next month on CNN. And of course, the Trump trial kicked into high gear this week. We had Phil Holloway and Viva Frei on to dive into the prosecutor's star witness, convicted felon Michael Cohen. We also had entrepreneur and author Gary Vaynerchuk here for the first time to talk about the way parents are today and the way they raise their kids without consequences and accountability and with never-ending trophies. It was a super fun conversation, and he had a lot of good advice for those of you who are trying to grow your business online. Enjoy, and I'll see you Monday. I'm going to start with Jen Psaki because I think what she did is so gross, and she's just gross. So she has written a book. Let me see if I can find it. I have so many papers today. Kelly McGuire, tell me what page this is on if you can in my packet. She's written a book. And in her book, she decided that it might be a good idea to describe and rehabilitate President Biden's incident at Andrews Air Force Base when the remains of our fallen soldiers in Afghanistan were returned after his debacle of a withdrawal from that war. And the name of her book is Say More, Lessons from Work, the White House, and the World. And I guess her lessons are, when something bad happens, you just lie about it. And that makes perfect sense, given that she was his press secretary and now she works for MSNBC. Here is what she wrote. This is per Axios, which has a copy. The president, now this is when, at Andrews, when he, infamously looked at that watch as the remains were in front of him. Per Axios, Psaki writes, the president looked at his watch only after the ceremony had ended. Moments later, he and the First Lady headed toward their car. She also writes that Biden's critics were engaged in, quote, misinformation and used the image to make him appear insensitive, concerned only about how much time had passed. Okay, none of that is true. He checked his watch during the ceremony repeatedly, not just once look at this. This is while the bodies are still in front of him. He tries to slide it in there. He looks at his watch. Even his most ardent defenders at the time who tried to fact check the claims that he checked his watch had to wind up admitting, all right, he did. In fact, he didn't just do it that once. He did it repeatedly. He wanted to get the thing over with. He was sick. There he is again. He was sick and tired of having to stand there and honor the fallen soldiers at Dover. We've talked about it repeatedly on this show. I'm sure you guys have talked about it as well. And she has the nerve to try to launder that moment in advance of an election by saying it wasn't until the whole thing was over. It is a lie, and it is a material lie she told in that book. Now, her account is not only at odds with what we saw with our eyes, but with fact checks done at the time, news agencies' photos from the ceremony at Dover, and statements from Gold Star families. Hold on a second. This is from Axios here. Mark Schmitz, the father of Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz told Congress in April of 2023 that, quote, while I stood there on the tarmac, no, actually we have the sock cut. Let's watch it.
Well, I stood there on the tarmac watching you check your watch over and over again. All I wanted to do was shout out, it's 2:30, asshole. But out of respect to the other grieving families, I bit my tongue once again.
God bless him. I'm so sorry for his loss, and you can feel his anger. And Jen Psaki calls him a liar by putting this lie of her own in her book. She's looking those Gold Star families in the face and saying, you lied. You put out misinformation to hurt our dear president. I'm the only one who will tell you the truth. She put it in her book, which she then read in audio form. And this is the same person who a week ago was out there lambasting Kristi Noem for lying in her book. At least she just lied about a dumbass meeting with a world leader. It's a lie that's dumb to tell, but of no consequence. This is a middle finger to the Gold Star families, and there's been no apology. What she's done so far is first, not respond when she was asked for comment by Axios. And then after they published their story, she said, the detail in a few lines of the book about the exact number of times he looked at his watch will be removed in future reprints about the ebook. Then she makes it about Beau Biden, because he's the go-to of the entire White House team whenever controversy hits. She tries to say the story on Afghanistan is really about the importance of delivering feedback, even when it's difficult. Told through my own experience of telling President Biden that his own story of loss was not well received by the families who were grieving their sons and daughters. You see, I got it. I understand he shouldn't have brought up Beau Biden, as then she does right here, to excuse her own lie and her offense caused to the poor Gold Star families. It's absolutely egregious. And by the way, no apology. Zero apology to the Gold Star families, 6 of whom spoke to the New York Post and have demanded a retraction and an apology from her. Nothing. Look at this. How dare she insult them in an effort to score political points for her heartless boss. What do you guys make of it?
Well, it's disgusting. I haven't read her trash book, obviously, as I imagine many people in your audience haven't either. But I wonder, while she was busily excusing him for checking his watch and disrespecting families to their face, whether she got into the fact that none of those families would have been there in the first place if it wasn't for Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. And the egregious missteps and just all-out callousness as it dealt with our armed forces who'd been, at that point, 20 years into a mission of trying to withdraw at the height of the fighting season so he could make a deadline of a 20th anniversary of 9/11, which is what this is all about. I mean, none of those families would be there in the first place if he didn't want to do a big ceremony on 9/11 announcing that he had ended the war in Afghanistan. Like, never mind the fact that the facts on the ground didn't support what he was trying to do, or he put their lives in danger. He got them killed. Let's just be honest with it. Yeah. They would not have died if not for that decision making. So his watch, whatever, yes, she's a liar, but I made the mistake years ago of assuming that everyone who speaks for the Biden administration had no training at all. I think they had tons of training, because I don't know how you can straight-face lie so often without having some sort of at least remedial course in sociology.
Well, it's a great point. But one way you can straight-face lie so frequently is if you have a receptive audience, and Democrats certainly have that in the mainstream press. We always say that the easiest job in town is Democrat press secretary, because they can say whatever they want, and it will lead the story as if they're the hero, and the Republicans are always quoted at the very bottom. And I think that conditions people like Jen Psaki into like this false sense of reality that, you just lie, you'll get away with it, just lie, nobody's going to notice. Well, he was on camera, and everybody, including that very, very sad story of that guy who, Megyn, like, that video was heartbreaking. Yeah. I feel so bad for that guy. And people like Jen Psaki just think they can lie to them and then move on to the next thing, the next cocktail party.
And then say it's misinformation. The nerve of this woman to say it's misinformation, to claim otherwise. She knows very well that the Gold Star families are on record as saying it happened. Keep going, Ashbrook.
No, you said it very well. It is infuriating. And it is very infrequent that they get caught in the lies that they tell on a daily basis. But I think that's why it's so important that people like you, Megyn, and people that are listening to this show are actively, vigilantly watching this president and this White House, because you know that the media is not. And so it's dependent on your audience, Megyn. It's dependent on people like you. It's depending on people like us at the Variety Program to hold them accountable.
You can only
Duncan
really
and
understand
Smug, let me. Yeah, go ahead, Duncan. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the only way you can really understand how somebody can be so successful at being such a bald-faced liar is understanding this revolving door between liberal dark money groups, government, and then media. I mean, Jen Psaki came up in her career in a liberal dark money group and then waltzed her way right into the White House to be a spokesperson for the President of the United States. And then when she got tired of that job, she's on national television every single night. Like, when you live a life like that, that's how you become a liar with no remorse.
That's right.
Yeah. But look at this. We pulled this a couple weeks ago when Ronna McDaniel got booted from the RNC. No, when she got booted from NBC, right? After like a day of service. Jen Psaki goes on her failing show at MSNBC. And maybe the audience remembers this. I compared her at the time to Dora the Explorer. She was like, I'm here for truth. La, la, la. Listen to what she said, how she described that path you just described, Duncan. Listen.
Some, mainly in the right-wing ecosystem, have made the comparison to others who have come from government or politics into the media, including me. And that is a comparison I felt like I had to address. I got into public service for the same reason that many people do, to serve the American people. And there are many others who have followed a similar path, who I have a great deal of respect for. But here's the thing. That kind of experience only matters and only has value to viewers, all of you, if it is paired with honesty and with good faith. And our democracy is in danger because of the lies that people like Ronna McDaniel have pushed on this country.
OMG. And not for nothing, because I'm just gonna show you the Dora clip because you weren't here. Here it is.
To dance the kitty cat dance, we need to scratch our kitty paws, stomp our feet, and wag our kitty tails. Till we got the mermaid free. Yay!
Same person.
That's a perfect comparison. Even the voice sounds the same.
Right?
Are we sure Psaki didn't do the voiceover for
was that
Dora?
another gig that she had on the way there? I mean,
do you believe those smug? I'm here to serve the American people. It only matters if it's paired with honesty and good faith and not lies.
That's the thing, is cloaking all of that bad faith under protecting democracy and saying any facts that are inconvenient to you are misinformation. Her book should have been lying for the Bidens, not lessons from the White House, because she ran the same playbook when Joe was running the first time. They lied about Hunter's laptop. This is their game plan during the election season, is they have to try to make everyone, trick them again into believing that, oh, Joe Biden, he's nice Uncle Joe. He's a nice guy. He's not the callous monster who sits and looks at his watch when the soldiers who were killed because of him are being brought back to the country. I mean, that's unbelievable to do that as a president. And to send out a spokesperson, she's still his spokesperson. Now she just gets to do it on MSNBC. To send out your spokesperson and try to lie to the American people again and say that didn't happen, don't trust your lying eyes, it's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
And then when caught, to just say misinformation, that his critics, you know, and now when caught red-handed on those lies, to say, oh, this small detail of exactly what the timing was will be corrected on the... No, that goes to the very heart of the matter. That depending on when the timing was, there's either a huge controversy or there's absolutely nothing. You changing the time of when he looked at that watch changes the story into a nothing, falsely. That's why this Gold Star dad was so pissed off, the timing of it in the SOT we played. That's why the 6 families are speaking in the New York Post immediately, saying this is bullshit, this is whitewashing. She knows very well this isn't some minor edit of like, oh, gee, I said 9:15 when I really meant 9:20. She completely changed the facts. And by the way, guys, as I mentioned, she was on The View, was it last week, ripping Kristi Noem on her book controversy. Watch this, last week.
I've also never worked for somebody who's lied about a foreign leader they've met with. And Alyssa made this point. This is so true. Meeting with Kim Jong-un, there are a handful of people who have ever done this. It's very knowable. I just wrote a book. You read the book 1,000 times.
So many.
You read it out loud. When you're doing the audiobook, you think, oh, you need a comma there. That weird word is strange. When she said, and I met with Kim Jong-un, did she think to herself, I didn't meet with Kim Jong-un?
Oh my God.
when you read the audiobook, you think about it 1,000 times.
Oh.
That was my takeaway. You need a comma there.
Did she
She's a
read the book
liar.
1,000 times where it said the president looked at his watch only after the ceremony had ended? This was a huge story. It was a huge story. It got coverage everywhere. She knows damn well that this matters. And either she didn't understand it at the time it actually happened and didn't bother to do any fact checking before she put this lie in her book, understanding that it could anger Gold Star families, or she lied throughout. My money's on the latter. I think she's a liar.
No question.
By the way, no comment yet from MSNBC either, which they should do. They need to also make a comment saying, we regret her error. She's going to make it right. And we're sorry. And then maybe put her on the air. But that's the same network that's employing Joy Reid, who lied to us about the FBI investigating who hacked her blog after mysteriously, when she was the only one ever posting on it, all these homophobic comments appeared on it. But that's a federal crime, lying to the FBI. Did she actually tell that shit to the FBI? Because she should be in jail if that's true.
Well, it's a funny thing. It's not an isolated incident. Obviously, we saw all of the lies that she had as press secretary. Like the one that I remember the most. Do you remember early on in the Biden administration when they had the border security, the border patrol on the horse?
Yes, that was awful.
And there was this left-wing outfit that said that this border patrol agent was whipping people.
Yeah.
And immediately the press office in the Biden administration jumps to it, takes this absolutely hook, line, and sinker, and they eliminate all kinds of things. They demonize the border patrol. They keep with the lie, and then it turns out, you find out a week later, none of that is true. It was literally the reins on a horse, like as anyone who's ever ridden a horse can attest. But they didn't walk any of that back, and the damage was done, and the impressions amongst the Biden base voters only further deteriorated for border security personnel. I mean, it's not just the Gold Star father. It's anyone who gets in their way, and I think you said it best, Ashbrook, remorseless is the key.
Yeah.
Anybody who speaks for a living is going to make an error along the way. The question is whether you feel bad about it and you correct the record after the fact. We've all had to do that in some form or fashion. They don't, and own it. And they don't, doesn't even occur to her that that's a responsibility.
She can't apologize to the Gold Star families because this was intentional and she knows it. There's no way of saying this was an innocent mistake. This was a huge deal. She understands very well, as the press secretary at the time, what she was doing. She knew perfectly well. And she decided to take the hit because she's running cover for him. She wants abortion on demand more than she wants an honest relationship with her listeners, readers, viewers. And that's very obvious. What do you make of the news that we're going to have at least 2 presidential debates, Mark?
You want to know what I think? The cynic in me is that the reason that Trump agreed, and he agreed so readily to CNN, is that this is 3-dimensional chess. And he knows he's going to get, or it's most likely he's going to get convicted in most state courts, in New York included. If you get convicted of multiple felonies, most judges will remand you immediately into custody pending sentencing. He's forestalling. He's going to dare this judge. You put me in custody. I've got a presidential debate. You have definitely interfered with the election. And here you go. I want it in June. I think that's exactly what's happening.
That's so interesting. I hadn't even considered that. Wait, could that happen? So if they wrap both cases by Monday or Tuesday, they have closing arguments maybe on Thursday because they're off on Wednesdays. The jury gets the case and we have a verdict potentially within 2 weeks from now. You're telling me the judge, if he's convicted, could immediately sentence him to go to jail?
Ask Marcia if she can name 10 cases where somebody has been convicted of multiple felonies while being cited for contempt during the trial, And name a judge who has not remanded that person pending sentencing. It's almost virtually unheard of.
True.
Marcia?
Very, very true. With all that he's got going on, with all not just this case, but a judge looks at the entire picture of what this guy's got going on. And it's a lot of cases and there's a lot of jeopardy. He's also been cited for contempt a million times. He's shown that he has no regard for the law. And someone like that, if you don't remand them, you're incompetent. So I have to say, no, I've never seen a case where they haven't. However, this would be the one where it doesn't happen because it's Trump. And I think the judge will probably not remand him. He may take his passport and do those kind of interim things you can do to control someone, their movements, and prevent him from leaving town. Maybe even give him an ankle monitor. But I don't think that he's going to get remanded.
We could have a presidential debate with one of the presidential candidates wearing an ankle monitor. Wait,
let me give you one. Let me just add one little kind of twist to this. So you've got a presidential candidate who's being tried in the Supreme Court of New York, who I think the odds are his best day is a hung jury. I don't think there's any chance of an acquittal given the jury. And he potentially faces being remanded into custody. That is a real possibility. If he was anybody but Trump, he would be in custody. And you now have, as of yesterday, Hunter Biden scheduled not for one, but two criminal trials in June as well. So the son of the current president and the leading contender for president, both dealing with criminal jeopardy in the same single month.
I'm dead. I died. I'm done. I can't. Can you just explain, Marcia, I'll give this to you. Explain remand.
That means being taken into custody. So when they say remanded into custody, he is sent back to the custody of the jailer, whoever that is, county, state, whatever it is, federal. So,
right. Marcia, why don't you describe what happens in the courtroom when they read the guilty verdict? You'll see them take off the watch, take off the pen, take off the belt, put their hands behind their back, get cuffed, and walked in the back door.
Yeah.
In the courtroom?
In the courtroom.
In the courtroom, right into lockup. It happens every single time, absent some extenuating circumstance.
Yeah.
In state court. In
state court. That's right. I can't vouch for what happens in a federal trial, but this is a state trial. So, and I would imagine New York follows what we do, Mark. I mean, it's the same procedure.
They absolutely do. Federal court is more civilized. Generally, if you've been out on bail or on release, they will put the case over for sentencing. They'll order the PSR, the pre-sentence report, and you'll be allowed to stay out of custody pending sentencing. State court, completely different. You are
what about a court like this, where a case like this, where most legal experts I've read do not predict Trump will be sentenced to jail? But even under those, as you know, somebody without a record, even under those circumstances, would the likelihood be if his name weren't Trump, he'd be remanded?
I don't know what legal experts you're talking to, but this judge has already threatened to put him in jail for saying the unbelievable statement that this jury is 95% Democrat and it's a Democrat coming to get me. That is what he has been found in contempt of. So, and when you're threatening jail over that, you get convicted of 34 felonies, he's going to go to jail.
Oh my God.
Usually,
go ahead,
usually that's absolutely true. By the way, he's also been cited for contempt for calling the judge corrupt, the clerk corrupt, insulting their families. I mean, he's made outrageously disgusting remarks, and any other defendant would have already been sitting in jail for contempt. So, you know, look at how unusual, we call it in the law, sui generis, this is. It's Trump, and therefore none of the rules apply. So, I mean, the fact that he isn't sitting in jail right now is amazing. So I don't predict that he's going to get remanded. It's possible he won't get jail time. Although given all of his behavior and everything that they've seen, if the jury does convict, and I think it probably will, it would be really ridiculous not to give him some jail time. We have to think about what kind of precedent you're setting, because this is, people have talked a lot about the nature of these charges and how unusual they are and how they're trumped up misdemeanors into a felony, et cetera. But it really was an effort to affect the election. There's no question that was the motive. He didn't care otherwise, and I do think the evidence has shown that. So whether you think he deserves jail time or not, it is a felony. And you have to think about what other defendant would get away with no jail time, given all that he's done and given what he's convicted of. It's remarkable, but I don't think he will. I mean, honestly, if I had to put my money on either side, I would guess he will not get jail time.
See, that's my legal expert right there, Mark. She doesn't believe it. I haven't seen. I mean, with Turley, McCarthy, I haven't seen anybody predicting that this is likely to result in a jail time sentence, given his complete absence of any criminal history. And I mean, you're saying this based on the fact that this is a Trump biased judge, which I agree with, which is why I don't think Trump's comments have been disgusting. I know why you're saying that, Marcia, but I think he's running for president and he's got two wars to fight. You know, he's got a legal war and he's got a PR war, and all those comments are very important for the PR war, which is working for him. And I understand now the judge has got to run his courtroom, and he's been chastising Trump at every turn. But Mark, on the subject of jail time, is that just based on the fact that you think this is a Trump-hating judge?
No, I think I think most judges, I'm just telling you based on 40 years of doing this, almost 99% of the time in a case like this, even though it's a documents case, you get convicted of a number of felony counts, you're going to get remanded, period, end of story. And by the way, I might bet Marcia on this. I still think will sentence him to jail. He may not remand him now because clearly under any interpretation that would interfere with the presidential election. But I can see him sentencing him to jail, staying the jail time, citing the fact he does not want to interfere with the election. But I don't think that this judge is going to say, I'm going to give you straight probation. I don't think there's any chance of that, frankly.
Are you going to take that bet?
We shall see. I'm taking that bet. I don't think it's going to be a long sentence. I mean, I don't think.
You don't think
even if he does get jailed, it'll be something minimal. Yeah, I think it'll be something minimal, if at all. But I would take the bet that he does not get jail time. That's
wow.
I'm in.
So you're saying no jail time and not remanded, and Mark's saying jail time and remanded.
I'm saying that I don't think he will remand. Most judges do, but if convicted, this judge is going to sentence him to jail and then stay the jail sentence so that he doesn't get accused.
Pending what? Pending what?
Pending appeal.
Okay,
Pending
so
appeal.
Trump, the filing or the resolution?
Yeah, no. What he will do is set a bail pending appeal, and that will to stay the immediate imposition of jail time. But I will tell you right now, this case, in my humble opinion, is so susceptible to being reversed on appeal. I can't even tell you. I mean, there's never most appeals are affirmed for the prosecution, or the conviction is affirmed. But this case, frankly, is the most attenuated legal theory that I can even imagine.
Okay,
so that is the jeopardy right there.
But do you think we talked about maybe Trump is agreeing to this immediately because he sees the debate as a disincentive to the judge to remand him or do anything too aggressive? Because now it's like we could be days away from, I guess it'll be a couple weeks away from a debate.
Unless they're going to allow him to debate from Rikers by video.
Oh my God!
I think frankly, like I say, it's three-dimensional chess. He knows agree immediately. This case is going to go to the jury in no time. There's no way that this state judge is going to remand him now pending a debate. There could have been a world where he would have remanded him for a small period of time, but I just can't imagine it now with a debate that's in the same month when he gets convicted.
Okay, so how about Biden's calculation then? I mean, is Biden's calculation probably no more than he's going to be fresh off of his first conviction, and I can't wait to discuss it in front of the American people.
That has to play into it, don't you think? There's no more, but it's a good vulnerable point at which to confront Trump. Well, look I'm talking to a convicted felon now. This is who I'm debating. He can call him a 6-year-old and everything else, but when you can call him an actual convicted felon, that's a pretty nice position to be in. So I would guess that has a great deal to do with it.
Yes, because Mark, it came out of the blue. I mean, I think most people did not expect Biden to agree to these debates. For the record, he's rejecting the Commission on Presidential Debates and their proposal, which we see in every election, to hold 3 presidential debates beginning in September. They happen in September, October. And Biden said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't want your traditional structures, and I reject you. I'll do it with 2 news organizations, one in June, one in September. And as I said, he said, pick the moderator from your existing roster. And Trump, too, said, I don't want the Commission on Presidential Debates either. So they're both going outside the traditional colored lines. It's kind of interesting. Trump wants an audience. He had his typical rhetoric, like it's going to be extremely exciting. And I can see Biden doesn't want crowds, although, he must be used to not having them. And Biden said, right, I don't want any crowds. I just want, like, in a news studio, quiet, and I want the opponent's mic turned off as soon as he's done answering. I don't know whether any of those terms have been agreed to, but we have 2 dates. This could wind up being like the Ben Shapiro-Candace Owens debate, which never happened, even though both parties said, yeah, bring it. No, it didn't happen. This could wind up, but I think it's going to happen now that you got the Nets involved. But I do wonder whether this could backfire on Joe Biden, Mark, because as we've seen all along, all the big lawfare efforts against Trump, whether it was the indictments, the mugshot, the trial, have wound up in the polls either not hurting or helping him.
Well, could it backfire? I'm sure the calculus is, I don't have any inside information, but living in my kind of left-wing Democratic bubble on the that I exist in, everybody seems to think in my world that if Trump is convicted, that the so-called swing voters are going to swing against Trump. I think that's wrong, frankly. I don't think that's the case. I think that so far, to echo your analysis here, every single one of these cases has imploded spectacularly, and every prediction by conventional kind of lawyers or wisdom has been dead wrong. I remember, Megyn, you probably do as well, everybody was saying the Fani Willis recusal motion had no legs. Everybody was saying that the judge in what's her name in the January 6th was going to.
That's Chutkan.
She was going to drive this thing to trial. We were getting to trial. There's no way the Supreme Court would entertain presidential immunity. Every single thing by the chattering class has been wrong when it comes to these cases. And, newsflash, it's because most of these people do not practice in trial courts or in appellate courts and don't have any understanding of what the legal issues are. And it's too bad, because I think it misleads people who are watching or listening to these things as to what the odds are in these cases.
All right, I have kind of a very interesting update on the Judge Chutkan January 6th trial, which I'm going to get to in 1 second. But I just want to stay on New York for 1 minute. Here's a bit of Joe Biden in his announcement. We found out he was willing to debate by a video statement he released on X, and then a follow-up with a written statement, and then Trump immediately said yes. But here's what Biden said in accepting the debate.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Okay, an attempt at humor there, because Trump's on criminal trial and he's off on Wednesdays, which is annoying, I have to say, because Trump's not allowed to talk about, there's so much that Trump is gagged in responding to. And it's just annoying that the sitting president would be bringing it up when he knows Trump has to fight with one hand tied behind his back. Okay, but whatever. Like, he can't get out there and say, yeah, I'm on criminal trial because I'm sitting in front of a jury that's 95% Democratic. And, if you go by the stats, no, he'll get jailed if he says that. Okay, whatever. He puts out the thing, he's looking for a laugh, and enter the crew at Morning Joe to provide it. Watch.
Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
Wow, nothing subtle about that, Rev.
Yeah, that was straight down the middle.
Oh, boy. Okay. So just a little preview of how it's going to go when CNN hosts the debate. He wanted to be attorney general. He wanted to be taken along to the administration. Trump was smart enough to realize, no, there's no role for you there. And then this is basically what happened to Michael Cohen. He became very familiar to many of us who have seen this movie many, many times. He jumped out immediately in all of the writings he did about Trump and podcasts he did about Trump and testimony he gave about Trump, becoming absolutely obsessed with the man. I give you Glenn Close.
I just want to be a part of your life.
Oh, this is the way you do it, huh? Showing up at my apartment?
What am I supposed to do? You won't answer my calls. You change your number. I mean, I'm not going to be ignored, Dan.
Yes, that's Michael Cohen today. He makes his living based on Donald Trump. He talks about Donald Trump. Even on the stand, he seemed a little wistful about his earlier time when he mattered to Donald Trump. And now he's just like, everything about this guy is defined by Donald Trump. He did switch his tune. I mean, okay. He has lied so many times, it's hard to keep up. But he's praised Trump repeatedly. I'll just give you a little. Okay, here he is in SOT 3 in a montage.
One thing Donald Trump is, he's a compassionate man.
He's a man of great intellect, great intuition, and great abilities.
Mr. Trump's memory is fantastic, and I've never come across a situation where Mr. Trump has said something that's not accurate. Mr. Trump truly cares about America. He loves this country. He's an amazing negotiator, maybe the best ever in the history of this world.
The words the media should be using to describe Mr. Trump are generous, compassionate, principled, empathetic, kind, humble, honest, and genuine.
He's not lying.
Wow.
He was protecting a friend. There's a difference.
What is the difference?
The difference is he was being a true friend. It didn't matter to him. He will ultimately, and I've said this so many times, he will ultimately go down in history as the greatest president.
Oh my God. With Chris Cuomo, who, by the way, has got his hands totally dirty in this whole thing too. So that's the government star witness today, Phil. I mean, I realize he changed his tune, but it's so self-serving. A jury will see through this.
I hope a jury will see through it, but we're talking about New York after all, and we've well documented that this jury, Alvin Bragg is counting on this jury to be sort of in the bag for Bragg and against Trump. You know, when you got a lawyer who is surreptitiously recording a client and then basically saying this little snippet of a conversation proves all the other things that I'm saying that are negative about him, which, by the way, weren't recorded, it just defies credibility. There's just no way in the world that a rational jury and a rational legal system would buy off on any of this, Megyn. You've got this individual who's capable of saying all of the things that you just played in that SOT, and then fast forward to today, everything that he says under oath before this jury is going to be diametrically different. Normally, we would say that that person is a compulsive liar and is not the kind of person you want to build a felony prosecution around. They have not proven the elements of this case. There's been no evidence yet in this case that Donald Trump committed a crime. They're going to have to hang their hat entirely on the testimony of this liar. They're going to have to get a jury to say, you know what? All the other times he's lied, we're going to give him a pass. We believe beyond a reasonable doubt he's telling the truth here in court. And it's going to be all done without any corroboration. There's no physical evidence. There's not going to be any documents. You're not going to have Donald Trump writing a letter saying, hey, Michael, I want you to use this money. I want you to pay it for something, and I want to record it on the books in another way. No, this is payment for legal fees or legal matters. And that's how
legal
it was
expenses,
into the book of the company.
Which is even more ambiguous. That's the word they used. And
where's the accountant?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I mean, the CFO is in jail. He's at Rikers. And I don't expect him, there's a real question about whether they're going to drag him in and testify. And if they don't, whether they're going to get an adverse inference drawn by jurist instruction. We'll see. But here's Michael Cohen. I gave you he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. That was like Glenn Close and Michael Douglas in the beginning of the movie. The hot elevator sex, the days and days behind closed doors while the wife was away. It was actually only one night. That was the beginning. Then Trump started to ignore the calls. And much as it had the same effect on Glenn Close, in Fatal Attraction. Here's what it did to Michael Cohen. All right, I'll show you. Let's start with top 5.
Michael Cohen here with another Michael Cohen Reacts. Well, I've been receiving countless phone calls by people, all concerned because they're hearing on the media that Donald Trump is going to run again. And he's going to make this fucked up bullshit announcement sometime after the midterm elections. All right? I still to this day maintain that he is not doing it. It is still part of this great grift of Donald Trump. Now, for me personally, I hope to God that this fucking scumbag runs. I really do. And you ask me why. Well, first of all, because 24 hours after that, I'm going to put together my own team. I want to run as a Democrat. I want to put myself up on a stage against this fat fuck, this orange-crusted Mandarin Oompa Loompa. So let's see if I'm right. Stay tuned. I'll be back.
Then he took his bunny off the stove. Viva. This is their star witness.
No, but I mean, I don't use the word grifter very often. I'm not going to use it now. But that very much seems like someone who's going to say one thing when it's profitable one way and say something that's the exact opposite when it's profitable the other way. And the other thing is when he's out there, praising Trump, first of all, I happen to agree with him back then. But he's not just praising Trump because he is, like a narcissist, indirectly praising himself. This is how smart Trump is, how good he is, and all this stuff. And I'm his right-hand man. I'm his fixer, so it must be a reflection on my own greatness as well. But, the idea that this guy is a convicted perjurer, he is a confirmed liar, he's a scoundrel of the highest order. I am now retrospectively reanalyzing Judge Engoron's decision in the E. Jean Carroll case, where he addresses Michael Cohen. And he specifically says, it's very funny why he said it. This man is a convicted perjurer. He's a liar.
Engoron was the fraud case, the $400 million fraud.
Engoron was, yes, the $455 million.
And Cohen testified in that case. Keep going.
Yes, not the E. Jean Carroll. Sorry, just to clarify that there. Engoron said, as a matter of his decision, Michael Cohen is a convicted perjurer, and while some triers of fact might not give much weight to the words of a liar, I believe him here. I'm paraphrasing, but it's almost verbatim.
It's almost perfect.
Now that I'm listening to that and rethinking it, it's like Engoron was phrasing what the jury has to spew out in terms of coming to a conviction here. Yeah, he's a convicted perjurer. Some jurors might think he's a liar now, but we choose to believe him now because once a perjurer, not always a perjurer. But no, I think Engoron actually telegraphed and laid up the script that the jury is going to gobble up to come to their foregone conclusion.
Everyone around him, Phil, is a liar. Michael Cohen is a liar. He had a lawyer and continues to have a lawyer. He's still represented by this guy, David Schwartz, who you may recall Michael Cohen got in trouble a couple months ago when he was trying to get out of jail not long ago, late 23, and he cited a bunch of case law to the judge. It was all made up. It was fake cases that he used some AI generator to come up with. And his lawyer was this guy, David Schwartz. And I've got to show you this. So David Schwartz came on my show at NBC shortly after this whole story broke about the $130,000 payment and so on and so forth. And now we know that Trump reimbursed Cohen for the $130. We know that. And it's almost better if Trump just would have done it himself, because you can make unlimited donations to your own campaign, but you can't have a third party do it, which is how they're trying to get him. But anyway, there's no question that Trump reimbursed Cohen for the $130. But the first defense that Cohen came out with was, I was not reimbursed. And I just did this out of my love, again, back to the Glenn Close in the elevator, for Donald Trump. And Schwartz came on my show and tried to spew this nonsense. Look at this.
He got approached. It'll take $130,000 to make this go away.
Got it.
He had to make a decision, okay?
I get it. I'm not even challenging on that. I'm challenging on the impossibility that he paid $130,000 for something he didn't do and never sought reimbursement from his client.
It when you're looking at it in a vacuum, but if you understand the relationship here, it makes complete sense that he's approached. Am I going to go to the boss or am I not going to go to the boss? All right, what do? He chose not to go to the boss.
Why?
He chose to take care of this thing.
Why wouldn't he get $130,000? Why would he pay $130,000 of his own money?
Well, you know what? When Michael Cohen does come out, you're gonna find out the mechanics of that.
No, you're not answering. You're dodging. You're getting out of bounds.
I am answering.
What's the truth?
The truth is he loves the boss, and
he did it out of love.
He did it. He did it. He did it out of love, and he did it out of loyalty.
All right. So they laughed openly at him. We know that he was reimbursed. Of course he was reimbursed. And that's his lawyer. The lawyer is a liar. Cohen is a liar. The jury's not stupid. I know they hate Trump, but they're not stupid. And I just gave you one soundbite. Here's a little bit more of Michael Cohen on the record since the breakup, talking about Trump. Stop 4.
Yeah, I think he's hit the panic button a while ago. However, what he's very good at is hiding it. In front of the camera, he's calm, cool, and collect because he's a sociopath. I looked at him and I said to myself, boy, what a sad-looking, pathetic, deflated individual. He is playing to the lowest denominator of American that exists in this country. He is truly the most dangerous person right now in this country and possibly the world.
Trump 2024, more like Trump 20 to 24 years.
Okay.
What?
So the thing is,
oh my gosh, a lot to unpack.
The prosecution's trying to front a lot of this in direct. So to take the sting out of what's going to be an absolutely brutal cross. But there's no way they can take all the sting. They'd spend every day, all day for the next 2 weeks beating him up if they really wanted to get after everything the defense is going to do to him. And I just can't believe that once the defense is done, the jury's going to be having any feeling other than, I want to vomit. Get him out of here.
But Megyn, you say that the jury's not dumb. The problem is they're partisan in all likelihood. And it's a big distinction. They're not going to do what they're going to do out of stupidity. They're going to do it out of partisan prejudice. And that's what I think is a foregone conclusion. But everyone should rewatch that Michael Cohen and just appreciate confession through projection. Everything that Cohen just said about Trump is true of himself. But Megyn, one thing about Phil, sorry I cut you off. You mentioned it a moment ago, and it's something that people should really understand. By reimbursing Cohen, the allegation is that it was a disguised campaign contribution because Cohen made it and then he got repaid for it. The bottom line is, even if that's the case, and that's the theory of the case, it should be Cohen who should be the defendant in this and not Trump, because like you astutely observed, you can't, over-donate to your own campaign. And so if it was Trump donating to his own campaign in kind or whatever, it's not a crime. If it's Cohen who did it because he got reimbursed and it exceeded his campaign contribution, Cohen should be the one on the defense.
Well, here's the other thing, Phil. I heard Andy McCarthy raising this point, and as usual with Andy, it was a good one. Who was defrauded? Who was the victim of this alleged fraud? Because Michael Cohen paid the money. Michael Cohen and everybody around him, the testimony is consistent. He got paid back, and Trump paid him double what he paid out so that he could pay full taxes, 50% on all the monies. So New York State did not get defrauded. The only thing that was defrauded was a book, allegedly, in which they didn't write down reimbursement for hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. They wrote legal expenses paid to Michael Cohen pursuant to a retainer agreement. And the testimony was there was no written retainer agreement. But meanwhile, all these lawyers are coming forward to saying, I never have one written down. I've had so many cases in which I don't have a written down retainer agreement, even if you're supposed to. Anyway, so who was defrauded? The book. The book was given bad information that was kept internally at Trump organization. The book wasn't even filed as an addendum to a tax return or to some sort of corporate submission that was required. It went on the shelf and it sat there until Alvin Bragg subpoenaed it. So who was defrauded? Because fraud in the ether is not actionable. And the law is really clear on that. They won't enforce fraud claims unless there's an identifiable victim, which is one of the reasons why the whole fraud claim under Engoron was so outrageous. But there, at least we had a specific statute saying it was okay.
Yeah, well, Engoron, of course, doesn't require any victims before he labels something fraud. Neither does Letitia James, and apparently neither does Alvin Bragg. In the TikTok video with Michael Cohen, when he says that he might run in 20 because he wants to be sort of on stage. Well, that's what's happening right now. He's got his way. He is on stage. This whole thing is a theatrical stage production. It's not a court of law. This is nothing that's based on reality in terms of law, because for the reasons you pointed out, there's no victims, no fraud. It's the only time in history that I know of where two misdemeanors, arguably with the statute of limitations having passed, are combined together to make a felony or 36 felony fraud counts where nobody was defrauded. It's absolutely ridiculous to call this thing a court of law. This is simply a theatrical production, and Michael Cohen has gotten his way. He is now on center stage with Donald Trump, and his TikTok followers are just going insane, and his own star in his own mind is on the rise. But let there be no doubt, Megyn, that this jury is going to make their decision based on their feelings about Donald Trump, not about what's going on in this courtroom. I can only hope that there's one or two, maybe even three, that will say, look, you know what, even though we don't like Donald Trump, we don't see a crime here.
In my job, I think that people trust me because they know I give them facts and I've researched what I say. I don't just come out here and read what I saw on X. And over the years, people build up a trust of you, with you. Like, okay, she hasn't misled me. I can take it to the bank. And they know that to deliver these complex things in a way that's digestible does take a lot of work. I would say that's the difference between myself and many in the news industry. Like, I will spend hours figuring it out so my audience doesn't have to.
I watch everybody and everything. It's what I do for a living. I'm completely aware that you didn't stumble into this audience. This is real work.
Mm-hmm. And everyone can do it. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is that's your particular focus. You do have to have some gusto.
Everybody can do it if they're self-aware. They have to find things that are like, I'll give you an example. I was an atrocious student because I wasn't passionate about Saturn. I didn't want to learn that. I just didn't, And so I think what hurts people is they're also not willing to be humble enough to say, I'm not good at this and I don't like that. And I think, right? You like that. I'm glad that you picked up on that.
Totally.
There's something really powerful to that. I'm going to say it again. You have to have the humility to say, I'm not good at this and I don't like that. And what happens is if you have that sentence with yourself, then you end up going to the place of, I am good at this and I do like that. And so
don't you think, Gary, this is another reason why false praise from one's parents is counterproductive.
It's devastating.
The parent doesn't have to be putting the child down all the time, but should not be falsely praising things that the kid is actually not good at.
I don't know if you can see this. Do you see the goosebumps I have right now?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, I do.
Do you know why? Do you know why I have this?
I know you love your mama.
Well, I love my mama the most, but let me say it from where you're going. I believe that 8th place trophies over the last 30 years have done more mental health damage. Do you understand that these kids, and I'm very fortunate, we hire so many kids right out of school. I have hundreds, 700-800 employees, maybe even 1,000 now that are 22 to 25. And I can tell you unequivocally, and so much of my audience is this age, I read all my DMs. I, like you, do the research, I read. When I tell you, the amount of kids today that are scared to lose because we taught them that losing was bad. It's so bad that we'll give you a trophy even though your team lost 14-1 in this game. And you'll appreciate this. I think this will make sense to you. All of this was well intended. It wasn't like all these parents came out 30 years ago and said, let's create soft kids that are zoo animals that can't live in the wild and are going to have really tough lives because they don't have a backbone or they can't deal with adversity or they don't have the stomach for, pressure. They just thought they were doing the right thing. The problem was it wasn't. To your point, you can do anything is true for about a nanosecond until you start trying. I can tell you right now that I see unlimited 6, 7, 8-year-old kids on sports fields all around New York City that immediately I can tell you that child is not capable of playing in the National Basketball Association. You know what I mean? And that's okay. Like when I walk through a classroom and see the art hanging that the kids made in 6th grade, I can save a lot of time right now. It is not true that any one of those kids can make art that will sell at Sotheby's in the future. That's great. You can try everything, but you can't be everything.
Yeah.
And when you fall in love with who you are versus who you wish you were, then it becomes game over. I, in 5th grade, wanted to play for the New York Jets. I, by 6th grade, realized I was more likely to buy the New York Jets than to play for them. That made me go into entrepreneurship, not professional sports. And by the way,
I love this story, by the way. I want to hear the story after you finish your point, but I want to hear the story about your mom and your sweater.
I thank you for that. I'm always happy to share the greatest human being of all time, my mom's story. To finish my story, this is very important, I think, for a lot of people. This is a big one, actually. I'm 48 years old. When I was getting D's and F's in school in the late 80s and early 90s, as you know, Megyn, and a lot of people listening right now, entrepreneurship wasn't cool. It wasn't a thing. Everything was about what's the best university you can get into, and then what's the best job you can get into. That was the status. That was the
Very
cool.
true.
That was the, right? There was no, when I heard entrepreneur in my youth, that meant that you were like a loser and you made pretend that you worked.
Yeah, and when you heard about somebody dropping out of college to go pursue under, you're like, oh my God, loser.
And so, but I was willing to lean into who I was because that's where my happiness was. And then I got fortunate that the timing of the world went in my favor. And now I walk around the world and people want to take a picture with me. This is nothing I even thought in a million years. All I wanted to do was sell wine for my dad's wine store. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to be a businessman. I didn't call it entrepreneur. I'm going to be a businessman when I grow up. That's just what I want for everybody. Don't worry what we think. Don't worry what I think or Megyn thinks or your friends think or your family thinks or the neighbors, and definitely not anonymous people on social media. Think about what you think. Think about what you think, because you're going to be 90 years old one day laying there. And if you have regret, I promise you that's going to taste a lot worse than people making fun of you because you want to open up a bike shop or you're quitting your corporate job to do landscaping. This judgment of others is destroying our happiness, and it must stop, as if anybody else's judgment has anything to actually do with your life.
It's so true. Oh, I love what you said, and I love it. I've heard you say that you don't believe in regrets, and I think my audience knows the same. I don't really have many. I don't spend my time thinking about that kind of thing. I think it's a real mental block toward going forward and advancing your life, your well-being, your happiness. But anyway, one of the reasons you're like this and wound up a happy, seemingly well-adjusted man is Mom. And that brings me to the Jets and your childhood experience. Can you just tell us that? I love this story.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna try to compose it here. Like, this is such a big deal. Like, it's, when I tell you that without a shadow of a doubt, it is uncomfortably clear to me that 89.6% of why I have happiness and contentness. And by the way, back to my professional success, I'm detached from my professional success, meaning I love my career. I love being good at it. I'm humbled by the admiration and opportunities of doing things like this it leads me to, but I don't think it defines who I am. Like, I don't think like I'm good or a good guy or a winner because I'm good at business. I think it's a skill I have that is now kind of revered a little bit more than it has. It's always been respected, but now it's cool, right? It's pop culture. And all of that is because of my mom. My mom was, back to what I just heard you say, I think you would love her parenting style. She was rainbow and sunshine. Like, I had nothing but joy around my household, except when I did things that were not right, which led to real accountability. I was grounded and punished 4 times a year like clockwork because I brought back a report card that looked like garbage, and that was unacceptable. And other than that, I was a pretty good kid, but if I ever did anything, like I would, first of all, let me go to a place that I think may resonate with you. I never even contemplated disrespecting my mom or dad.
Oh gosh. My mom, I mean, I did it because I was a bratty teenage girl, but man, oh man, my mom, Linda made me pay.
Yeah, and by the way, Tamara made my sister Liz pay for the same teenage girl thing. I never went through that phase, but on Real Talk, it was because I was worried. She was an old school, like, we don't play that around here. Like we are in an era now, look, I can wrap my head around why we stopped spanking our kids. Though, if I'm being unbelievably transparent, like I could get a couple glasses of wine in me and I can get into like a thoughtful of like, is there an angle there? But the fact that we don't even ground our kids anymore in modern parenting, are you kidding me? Yeah. All we're teaching people is that there's no consequences in life. Do you know why everyone's so interesting on Twitter? Because you can't punch them in the face when they say something to you. I grew up in Jersey in very blue collar, lower middle class neighborhoods. Let me tell you what happened when we would say something fresh to each other. Somebody might get punched in the face. Right? And so we live in a society now where there aren't ramifications. There are consequences. And I couldn't agree more with people understanding, like, actually, Megyn, you'll like this. Do you know why the book cover is purple? Because we become, and boy, oh boy, nobody understands this better than you in this audience. America's become unbelievably red and blue. Like, woo, we are really loving red and blue. When it comes to parenting, if you can be purple, then you win. To your point, and you said it earlier, I'm not talking about scolding your children. I'm not talking about what a lot of parents did to their children. Listen, I'm going to be vulnerable here. My grandmother, what she did to my father, and she was a Russian woman in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, 60s, 70s. This is no judgment. They grew up in people don't understand the USSR, Megyn. The USSR was like North Korea. You weren't allowed to leave. It was jail. It was I promise for everyone that's listening here, which means you listen to a lot of politics and world news and care about this stuff, you have no clue what the USSR was from 1917 to 1991. It was bad. So I don't judge my grandma, but I'm very aware of what a human looks like when they don't get positive reinforcement, when they get negative, when they get that all the time. My father is one of those people. And it's a real challenge to have true self-esteem when you're parented in that negative of an environment. So I'm not saying to everybody to do that, but to parent in a delusional way where everything is great and you're the best and go fight your kids' fights. Megyn, do you know that parents go to school and try to argue with parents to give their kid a better grade? Do you know how crazy that is?
I know, it's absolutely nuts and beyond. In corporate America too. I've told a story before, but we had a friend at a huge investment bank in New York City. We had dinner with he and his wife, and he was telling us that he actually received a phone call from a new hire at this major American bank from a new hire's mom complaining about her son's tough schedule. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, to me, look, you know what's amazing? You know what's amazing about being born in the Soviet Union and living in America? You realize that people have options. My parents were granted jobs that they couldn't transfer from in their early 20s before we moved to America. When people come to my company, and we have listen, I believe in a happy culture in a way that you can't imagine, but not delusion, not entitlement. And when people are like, yo, this blows, this stinks, this sucks, I always, honestly, I take it pretty serious. I'm not ivory tower. I try to attack it. I try to have meaningful conversation. We go try to address it. But when somebody comes a second, third, fourth, fifth time and complains about things that don't matter, like, it's one of the most joyous things that in my career that I'm able to say is like, hey, unlike me, who was born in a communist country, and luckily I got out, and definitely unlike my parents and grandparents, you have options. You don't like this company? You know what I would have said to that mom? I said, Mom, first, and this is that, I'm gonna tell you exactly what I would have said. Not for this show, but real life. I would have said, first, Mom, I think it's very sweet that you're calling for your son in one part of me. The other part of me thinks that your son's in big trouble because if you're fighting his fights and he's a grown-ass man, he's got a big problem. And here's the answer to your question. Yeah, and here's the answer to your question. He's more than welcome to do this schedule. We hired him for a reason. We think he's got talent. But if this schedule is too tough for him, he really needs to consider doing something else.
Yeah. That's what I always say. I always say on my team, you don't want to work weekends occasionally. You don't want to work a late night when news breaks. Go work at KeyBank. It's wonderful. You know exactly what the hours are. Go show up at 9, leave at 4, you're good.
And I want everyone to hear this because this is an important nuance. And I don't judge them. You don't want to? Good. Know yourself. No problem.
You want news may not be for you.
Mazel tov. Like you wanna go chill. Like, do you? I chose to completely punt school. Everyone told me that I should get A's and B's. I told myself I should get D's and F's, and it was joyous. It was joyous until I got grounded every marking period. But
it's joyous.
But it was more than fun for me. Same now in real life. I may want to be hungry and build meaningful, everlasting empires that have positive impact and selfish and selfless goals. But if you are structured a different way and you value something else, and to your point, the occasional discomfort of needing to do something that's out of the normal structure, then that's amazing. You shouldn't work in an entrepreneurial, in my world or your world, fast-paced reality. You shouldn't be a fireman if you're not willing to wake up when the fire happens, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's very okay. This is important. I do not judge people that do not have my ambition or work ethic or interests. I just want them to be themselves. But what I don't want, and this is where I think you're going, and the theme of this, and this will land with everyone, I don't want people to think they can get compensated when they're
That's
not
right.
that person.
That's right.
When if you don't want to be let me make this simple for everyone to understand. If you don't want the pressure of being the quarterback and you want to be the backup linebacker, well, then you better not expect to get quarterback money.
That's exactly right.
If you're like, can we have the conversation, everyone? Like, you're allowed to do whatever you want, but when you start sneaking into entitlement that you should, there is no should. Hey, everybody, everyone who's listening, you want to get way happier? You want things to go way better? Let me give you something. Eliminate the word should from your vocabulary. There is no should. It's too nuanced. What do you mean should? This is why I get so crazy, Megyn, about everyone judging everybody else. You have no idea what's going on in their house. You don't know their background. You don't know what's going on today. I said something the other day, a kid comes in yelling about their manager, who's been good to them for 3 years. I hadn't had the information yet to know what was going on, but I said to the kid, I said, but you've loved her for 3 years. What if what if you're struggling with her for the last 3 weeks because 3 weeks ago she found out that her mom is terminally ill and she hasn't told anybody yet? Maybe that's why she's not showing up to the meeting and over coddling every moment. Like, maybe, you know what I mean? I don't think, people love throwing around empathy until it's not working for them.